Our first question, given that you've done a huge amount of work making unions aware of the pitfalls of data protection and so on, what do you think are the must-dos for education unions to protect their members in this area? What must we absolutely do?
Capacity build, capacity build, capacity build. You know, it's not just in education unions, it's across all unions in all sectors. We really need to up the ante, so to speak, in relation to understanding these digital tools, understanding, you know, what are the building blocks of an algorithm, you know, knowing what questions to ask. So, you know, I'm helping a lot of unions to train not only the union leadership, the secretariats, but of course also the members in understanding these things. And this is something we urgently need to do.
Well, that's a great answer, especially with the problem of algorithms, of which certainly teachers in the UK and Ireland are only too familiar with that,
yes.
with the exam takeoff we had. But I mean, I'm sure in other jurisdictions too. So let me just ask you this. You have a very strong focus in your work on the governance of data, as you just said, and algorithmic systems. So what role do unions have in governing these systems? And how do you think education unions can influence government to give them more say about teachers and students' data and how it's used and what mechanisms we should be trying to put in place? Because we know data is money.
You say that again, sorry?
We know that data is money. Data is monetized all over the place, isn't it?
Yes,
so,
and it shouldn't be, right? This is the problem number one. The moment we see data as a commodity that can be bought and sold is the moment we transcend the human rights, our privacy rights. Then we subordinate those rights to monetary value. So this is something that I think I really agree with Professor Shoshana Zuboff, who says we should ban all markets and human futures. So this predictive analysis and so on. But going back to your first part of your question, I think what education unions really have to understand is that this whole ed tech, so the technology of education, is such a huge market, predicted to rise to $285 billion in just 3 or 4 years. So, you know, when we've capacity built, so we know what we're talking about, we know what critical questions to ask, we should then start really looking into, number one, what systems are in place in our workplaces, in our schools, who owns these systems? Is it proprietary systems that have been brought in and just implemented without further ado? We should be working very closely, demanding very clear demands with our education authorities. Why are they recommending or buying in these systems? What agreements do they have with these private tech companies around joint data access and control, for example? You know, I was spooked recently at a UNESCO event where a representative from one of these edtech companies was giving a speech, and slide number 2, I think it was, had we are extracting 50 million data points a day on our edtech, so on students, on children, right? And I then asked him, I said, well, what privacy rights, you know, concerns do you have for the children here? Oh, our data is anonymized, he said. Now, we then have to be smart enough to know where everything anonymized can be very quickly de-anonymized. So this is a brilliant case of where are the education authorities in this? What demands do they have? And what demands should the teachers and the unions have in each and every you know, learning institution around this massive data extraction?
Thank you so much for that, Christina. I think we have Larry with us in the green room, and I wonder if he would like to come in and ask maybe just one more question, because to stay on schedule, we've only really got time for one more. So, Larry, do you want to ask maybe one of the last questions that you had on the list?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Christine. Evening, Christina. Apologies for being late. I was on Scottish time, which is very peculiar. I'm just very interested in terms of, as a practitioner, the role of teachers in relation to, if you like, data literacy, so that you're talking about the protections we need to put in place, but as educators, we also have a function in terms of developing an understanding on the part of tomorrow's citizens. So I wonder what your views were on that particular challenge.
Yeah, it's a great question, Larry, because let's be honest, everybody listening to this who's above the age of, I would say, 35, we've got a lot to answer for, right? We sleepwalked into this situation. Yeah. We never asked, why is Google Chrome free? Why is Facebook for free? Why are all of these apps on my smartphone free? We were never critical towards that. It wasn't until, Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal that some people started thinking, So, the education, being very aware of what are the price, nothing is free. There's nothing called a free lunch. So what are we giving away when we're using all of these digital services? How can we protect our identities? What information should we put on social media so it doesn't come haunting us later in life when we're trying to find a job or something, right? How can we respect the privacy of others? A simple thing is, if I walk into anybody's home, which happens less and less now because of COVID, but I ask them, do you have an Amazon Alexa or Google Home device? If they do, I ask them to turn it off because I don't want my privacy, rights violated. So, it's essential that we teach children to be critical, to be very careful of what they post online, to be aware that there's nothing called a free lunch, and that we talk, virtual private networks with them and so on and so forth. So yeah, we have to, I think, a bit of redemption time there because we played our part in ending where we are right now, which is not a good spot.
Well, I think Larry and Christina, there's a lot for us to think about there, and it's certainly work, Larry. I know that ETUCE has been focused on for a while. So if you have a last remark, Larry or Christina, and then we'll think on about how this can work for us, but what we shouldn't be doing.
Well, I suppose just following on from Christina's comments there about the role of educators, but you are, Christina, essentially still optimistic that we can control this beast in a sense. We don't have to be victims of AI. We can actually still assert our own control over it.
Well, I am, but I would also say we have to hurry up. Right? We really have to hurry up as unions, as workers, and say, hey, I'm not going to be subject to all of your opaque algorithmic influences and so on. We demand insight. We demand the right to say no. We demand the right to collectivize our data and build data trust, so we can tell our version of the story. Data and all of this is not more clever than the eyes that are analyzing it. And at the moment, we're subject to a very unilateral, corporate-driven version of identity. So tech is not born evil. Tech is not born good either. And we really need to push our governments to put better regulations in place to control this so it serves people and planet.
That's great. Christina, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. Larry, you can get back to Scottish time now. And happy World Teachers' Day to everyone in Scotland. So thank you very much to you two for that really interesting discussion and work, as I say, that ETUCE, that the European region has already been focusing on. Now, as we all know, we're in the middle of a public health crisis, a pandemic. And so it's not surprising, but it's very pleasing that we are now joined in a message by the World Health Organization Director General, Tedros Adhanom. And he will then be followed by Annie Sparrow, who is live and will be answering some questions. So we'll take the video now. Thank you.